Sup everybody, this is Soul Eater Will. Welcome to my first ever quick review. Now, before I really get into it, this is my first time ever doing anything like this. I'm not really used to being in front of a camera, so I'm sorry if I stammer or anything, because this is completely unscripted. And this is my first time ever doing a setup like this. This is my first time using my camera, my mic in this fashion. So this is going to be very interesting. So let me know if there's any way I can improve. My setup will likely change in the future, but for now, this is what I got. So basically what a quick review is I just go through any game, TV show, or anime, really anything I decide to review, and I just go through it, talk about the pros, the cons, the mixed aspects, probably talk about, I'm gonna do also a summary of the game itself, the gameplay and the story before I really get into it, and then I'm gonna give a score at the end, telling you guys really how I feel. Now keep in mind, I'm not going to get too critical here. This is just my personal feelings of the game. This is just how I feel, so take this with a grain of salt. Don't get too offended. If you guys disagree with me or agree with me, we can talk about it in the comments. But remember, I just want to keep it respectful. There's no reason for us to be hostile. I like to have respectful arguments, and if you guys want to have those, I am totally for it. But this is just how I feel about the game. So let's get straight into it. So Ghost of Tsushima is the game I am talking about today. This is going to be the game to start off my quick review series. So Ghost of Tsushima is a game that came out in July 17th. I actually got it at midnight release, and it's a game developed by Sucker Punch Studios, which is actually pretty cool because they actually made the first, or at least one of the first, PlayStation 4 exclusives. They kind of kick-started this PlayStation 4 generation, and now they're ending it with Ghost of Tsushima, which I think is actually pretty fitting. And by the way, the game they kickstarted the PS4 generation off with, I don't think I said this, Infamous Second Son, and now they're making Ghost of Tsushima. And I think that's very cool, because honestly, I had never played Infamous Second Son, but I heard good things about it, and I heard that it was a good way to start the generation, and so does Ghost of Tsushima kind of follow up with that? Is it a good way to end the PS4 generation? Well, let's talk about it. So, first of all, let me kind of give a summary about what Ghost of Tsushima is really about. So, let's start with the story. So, Ghost of Tsushima takes place on the island of Tsushima. I know, crazy. But, yeah, it's in Japan, an island in Japan, and you play as Jin Sakai, who is a samurai warrior, and I believe this takes place around, the Sengoku era. I'm sorry if I'm wrong about that, but I believe it's around there somewhere. You know, it's way back then. And, the Mongols are invading the island of Tsushima, and they absolutely slaughter in the invasion and basically kill all of the samurai, and the only samurais left are really Jin Sakai and Lord Shimura, who is actually Jin Sakai's uncle, and Lord Shimura gets captured by the commander of the Mongols, who is the grandson of Genghis Khan. So the story, at least at the beginning of the game, is Jin Sakai tries to save his uncle. Jin Sakai is saved by this girl named Yuna, and Yuna is like, hey, I will help you save your uncle if you help me save my brother. And it's sort of a mutual thing, and basically they just kind of work together, and they find people to help them with their cause to take back their island. The story's pretty simple, but I think it's pretty effective. So now let me talk about the gameplay. So the gameplay is open world hack and slash, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Assassin's Creed a little bit, or Far Cry. I know a lot of people say that, but that is what it reminds me of. I'm actually a huge fan of those games, so that's actually a positive thing. But let's talk about that gameplay, because the gameplay, it's hard to simplify. It has a lot of aspects to it. The first aspect of the gameplay that I really want to talk about is the stance system, and depending on which enemy types you are fighting, you're going to be using different stances. You start off the game with only one, the stone stance, and I believe, the stone stance, and you use that to fight sword enemies, and then as you progress your character, I think it's the water stance against the shieldsman, and then the wind stance towards the spearmen, and then you get the moon stance, and then eventually you get the ghost stance, but I don't really want to talk about that one. I like to leave that one up to surprise. I really like this stance system because it adds sort of a new depth to this type of gameplay. It isn't just mindlessly hack and slashing enemies. You actually have to constantly change your stance and actually strategize which ones you're going to use at which time, especially when you're getting invaded by a bunch of enemies at once. The second aspect I want to talk about are the different weapons that you acquire as you level up your character, such as smoke bombs, black powder bombs, kunais, wind chimes, all this other different stuff that you're going to get. Eventually you get a grappling hook as well. And they're useful, especially like for each different... there's two different types of ways you can play this game. You can either play like as a samurai, or sort of more like a shinobi kind of, or like a ninja, and be like more... Oh, I just hit my mic. More like stealthy. And each weapon is good for like a... I keep hitting my mic, dude. So... yeah, each weapon is good for a different type of playstyle. So like the smoke bomb and the wind chime are good for the more stealthy type of players, and then the like black powder bomb and the sticky bomb are good for the more assault samurai type of players. Also, there's a skill tree that you will progress as you level up your character. I'll get more into that later. And like I mentioned, this game is open world, and you do not have to worry. This game has you covered content-wise. This game has so much to do, so many side missions, so many collectibles, so many like shrines you can visit that kind of remind me of bell towers from Far Cry. You can go to all these fox dens to level up your charms. There's a lot to do, really. You're not gonna have to worry about that. So it's open world. A lot of stuff to do, hack and slash gameplay. That's really the basics of the gameplay. So now that we got the basics down, let's talk about the pros, the mixed, and the cons. And I actually have them written down right here because I knew I was going to forget. So my first pro I have written down here are the good graphics and the good performance. Yeah, I have no complaints with the graphics here. The graphics here look absolutely amazing. I love the art style this game has. It's like realistic, but it sort of has like a whimsical feel to it. Like, it doesn't feel too overly realistic. It kind of has this like Japanese aesthetic, like, I don't know, it just captures the atmosphere of this like historic Japanese island, and it's just so beautiful. It's so immersive. I love it. I don't think they did anything wrong with the graphics. I mean, there's obviously like maybe one or two texture issues, but nothing major. All games have that. What else? Oh yes, the performance. I had no problems with this game performance-wise. I played this game on the PS4 Pro, and this game had no frame rate drops that I noticed. The render distance, oh my god, this is the best render distance I've ever seen in an open world game in a long time. Like, it's just amazing how good the render distance is in this game. Overall, graphics and performance-wise, I can't think of a single bad thing to say about this game. This game is absolutely phenomenal in that aspect. And what else? Oh yes, the story. So I have a few things wrong with the story, but I also have a few things I like about the story. So I guess that would technically be more like in the mixed, but what we're presented with, the story itself, like what we actually got in the end, was good in my opinion. I think that is a pro. I think that it is a very simple story. It's really just, oh, you're a samurai, you need to take back your island from the Mongols, blah blah blah. But I think they kind of configured the story to be simple but really effective, and I think the plot twist did land. I think all of the missions, it had good pacing. Really, I didn't have any issues with the story as far as what we were presented with. I thought it was solid. I was never bored. I was never bored when I played this game. So I thought, honestly, story-wise, no complaints here. The gameplay loop of this game is absolutely fun, at least for me. I love hack and slash games, and this is just another combat system that I love. I think they did a really good job with it. They didn't overly simplify it. They gave it some depth, but they didn't go too crazy with it. It's good. I love the gameplay loop. It never bored me. I never felt like I never felt worn out. Like, it was never repetitive for me. I thought generally it was a very solid gameplay loop. What else? Yes, I loved some of the main story missions in this game. Like, I can talk about one mission without spoiling. There's like this mission where you're inside like this caved village, and the Mongols invade, and that's where you acquire one of the stances. If you've played the game, you know what mission I'm talking about, I think. Like, you know, the one where you're first introduced to that one stance. Love that mission. My favorite mission in the game. None of the missions, at least none of the main missions, bored me. I thought they paced it out very well. Good job on the story missions. Good design. no, I don't really have much wrong to say about in that aspect. Good job, guys. So those were the main pros I have. There might have been a few minute things I missed, but I love the duels. That's kind of one thing that just came to mind. The duel system in this game is so fun, and it kept me very engaged. Probably some of my favorite gameplay probably my favorite gameplay aspect of the entire game. I loved the duels, and they were very immersive, very well done. Good job on that front. Also, I actually just now thought of this. I love the photo mode. Best photo mode I've ever seen in any game, period. Perfect photo mode. Good job, guys. That was a really good thing you worked on there. But there, like I said, maybe a few minute things I missed, but those were generally my pros. Good characters too. That's one thing that comes to mind. I did like the characters. Yeah, that's all I can think of. Off of my head, I cannot think of anything else, but generally I enjoyed most of the aspects of this game. But there are a few aspects that I think are mixed and cons, so let me go ahead and cover those. Let me go ahead and start with the mixed. So the first thing I've written down are some of the side missions. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like some of the side missions. Like, I like the quest line with Sensei Ishikawa, and the quest line with Lady Masako. But I wasn't really as huge of a fan as like Norio's quest line. I just didn't think it was as strong. I wasn't a huge fan of Yuna's. I thought it was too short, and it didn't really engage me that much. I just thought some of the side missions, they were kind of hit or miss. Some of them I really liked. Some of them were just kind of chory a little bit. Some of them kind of felt like chores, and some of them were just not really that exciting. A lot of them were like just tracking down Mongols and stuff and all this stuff. It just, some of them I liked, some of them I did not like as much. And the other mixed thing I have down is the progression system. I think the progression system in this game is a little unbalanced. I think it's generally fine, which is why this is more of a mix. Like, I think it's not a huge, like, problem. But basically, I should probably explain this. There's 3 regions in the game. There's there's 3 acts, and there's 3 regions. So Act 1 takes place in the first region. Act 2 takes place in the second region, Act 3 takes place in the third region. So it's kind of split up into different, like, the Act 1, you know, like I just explained. And in the first region, by the end of Act 1, I paced myself pretty well. I didn't, like, you know, really speed through the story that much. I kind of paced myself, did some of the side missions, and by the time I was at the end of Act 1, I already had all of the stances, not including Ghost Stance. And I already had a big portion of the weapons that you're supposed to unlock. So I already had mostly everything by the time Act 1 was ended. And so with Act 2 and Act 3, there was nothing really hugely new that really engaged me in the way Act 1 did. Act 1 had so much new stuff. Like, you got the grappling hook in Act 1. You were getting all your new stances and all your new, like, weapons, and I just feel like in Act 2 and Act 3, they didn't really include as much of that, and I think the game would have really benefited from having a bit more, maybe taking a little bit more risks, or not really more risks, but just adding more things, like the grappling hook. Maybe for each act, add, like, a new, like, aspect or something, you know? I feel like they could have just added a bit more there. Another mixed thing I have is the voice acting. Now, I personally played this game in Japanese with English subtitles, and the voice acting was great. I had no problems with the Japanese voice acting. I mean, normally Japanese voice acting is really solid. It's not always solid, but it tends to be. But the reason why this is a mixed aspect was I tried listening to the game in English. I wasn't a huge fan of it. Not saying that it's bad, but it just didn't immerse me the same way the Japanese did. And the main aspect of this, to where it's more of a con than a pro, is I wasn't really a huge fan that they lip-synced the English voices rather than the Japanese voices. Now, I understand it, I get it, which is why this is a mixed aspect and not like a con, but it was noticeable, and it did kind of take me out of it when I was trying to watch this game in Japanese, and they were all speaking like their lip-syncing was off. I don't know, it was just weird, but that's really one thing. And the last mixed aspect I have is that this game, now, like I said, this is mixed because this is very dependent on the player. This didn't apply to me, but this can apply to some. If you're not a huge fan of gameplay loops or games that, like I just previously mentioned, didn't really have much evolution with Act 2 and Act 3, the gameplay never really majorly changes, so it can get repetitive for some players. If you're not a huge fan of the gameplay loop, this game can get repetitive for you, and that's okay. It's not for everybody. And I understand that. Not all gameplay loops are for everybody. it's just how it is. But yeah, those are most of my mixed aspects, and I do have a couple of cons. Not many, because this game was very solid. But there's actually three main things that come to mind when I think of cons. The first con I want to talk about is the story. Now, I liked the story we were presented with. I did say it was simple but effective, and I still stand by that. I like the story, but at the same time, on the other side, like when you flip it over, we could have gotten a really complex story with a bunch of branching paths. I feel like they didn't really take this opportunity, because a huge theme of the game is like, okay, do you stick with your honorable way to be a samurai, or do you be more like a rebellious, like, shinobi, like you don't really fight with honor? And it just doesn't feel like you're really given a choice. Like, there's not really a choice. Do you want to fight honorably, or do you want to be more like a stealth-oriented player? And while that is a choice, it isn't present in the story, because the story is very linear. The only thing that is not linear about it is that there's two different endings, but that's it. There's not really much else that you can affect the story with, depending on which path you take. And I feel like they could have really branched it to give it different endings, to where, like, oh, maybe one way you take the honorable samurai way, or the other way you become more like the Ghost of Tsushima, or more like the, like the shinobi type of character. And I feel like they could have really taken that opportunity. I feel like that they also could have went a little bit deeper with some of the characters. They did with some of those quest lines, like with Sensei Ishikawa's quest line and Lady Moscow's quest line, all that good stuff. But I feel like they could have went a little bit deeper with, like, the Khan himself. I feel like they could have went deeper with Lord Shimura, even Jin Sakai. I feel like they really could have, like, dived deeper into their characters. I feel like they kept it pretty surface level throughout the game. But yeah, those are my main story problems, but generally I did like the story, so it's not really a big thing. It's just missed opportunities. Now the biggest con, this is a big con, the camera. I honestly was not a huge fan of the camera in this game. It glitched out a lot, especially, and it tended to even glitch out like in places where it shouldn't have, like duels, and it glitched out, especially when you're facing like a bunch of enemies at once, and it tended to just go all over the place sometimes. Even like the camera just messed up a lot, and I feel like that's something that can maybe be fixed with patches, but it was very noticeable. If one thing. And also the freeform targeting was a little bit weird at times. Like, I like it, but whenever you're fighting a bunch of enemies at once, the freeform targeting, because there's no lock-on system, can get very messy and not work in the way you want it to. Like, you'll be fighting an enemy over here when you want to be fighting an enemy over here, and it can get messy at times, and I just think that kind of took me out of it sometimes. But not all the time, it's just kind of a minor thing. But those are the main cons that I can think of right now. There's probably a few others, but generally I didn't have many problems with the game too much. I do think there are things that could be shaped up a little bit better, but generally I like this game a lot. So now that I've covered all of the pros, the mixed, the cons, I think I'm going to go ahead and give my final thoughts on the game. I think while this game doesn't really present anything too innovative or new, it perfects a system that has already been kind of established in other games like Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, other hack and slash open world games that we've seen before. It kind of takes those systems and really kind of perfects it. I think I'm going to just go ahead and give my score. I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. And 8 out of 10 is a great game for me. I was originally going to give this a 7, but honestly, I don't think it has enough negatives for me to warrant it being that low. Like, I think generally it was a very positive experience. It had a lot of content. There was not really a lot of negatives, and there were some, but not a lot. So I think generally this is an 8 out of 10 game. It's great. Good story, fun gameplay loop, great graphics. Really not much wrong to say about this. Like I said, few things wrong, like the camera, a few glitches, a few texture issues I noticed here and there. Just nitpicky stuff, but the camera is a problem though. They do need to fix that. The progression system, I wish like I said, they took that opportunity to go a little bit further with it. The only reason why this is an 8 out of 10 instead of like a 9 or a 10 is because I feel like they could have went a little bit more riskier or try to innovate a little bit more with this game. I feel like they could have went braver with things I already covered, like the progression system and all that stuff. But yeah, 8 out of 10 game. Buy this game. I say this game is totally worth $60. It will fill up your time. It's a very fun game. not if it's on sale, definitely get it. If it's on sale, definitely get it. But honestly, this is worth the $60. Definitely a great way to end the PlayStation 4 exclusive library, and this makes me very excited for the PS5. I'm hoping the PS5 is going to be just as strong. Let's hope so. And those are my thoughts on Ghost of Tsushima. So tell me, guys, what do you guys think of my first ever quick review? I'm not really used to doing reviews like this. I'm not really used to talking in front of a camera, so chances are I pandered a little bit, and I'm sorry if I did that. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on stuttering. I'm going to work on stammering, all that stuff. I'm very new to this. I'm going to get better over time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're here right now, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys. If you want to support the channel, please be sure to subscribe and like this video. I'm going to do more quick reviews. I might end up doing reviews not only of games, but TV shows, like I said, and maybe even anime, stuff like that. But I'm not really sure yet. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that or not. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys today. So, like always, guys, stay cool and stay safe. See you guys.